Good morning, everyone. Today I will be reporting about the language policy as a tool for marginalization, the influence of the English-only movement in today's United States by Marc Deneire. Now we will look into the complex interplay between language policy and marginalization in the United States. So language policy in the United States has long been a subject of debate, with implications reaching far beyond mere communication. In this presentation, we will explore the English-only movement and its profound impact on marginalized communities in contemporary American society. By examining historical perspectives and current realities, we will know how language policy can serve as a tool for exclusion and perpetuate systemic inequalities. So that means we will examine how language, often seen as a means of communication, can also be wielded as a tool for exclusion and marginalization in contemporary American society. And for the background, we have historical context of language policies in the United States and the evolution of the English-only movement. So for the historical context of language policies in the United States has a rich and diverse linguistic history shaped by waves of immigration and cultural influences. Throughout its history, the U.S. has grappled with questions of language assimilation, identity, and cultural preservation. Early colonial policies often favored English as the dominant language, reflecting the influence of British colonialism. Which means people from various parts of the world have brought their languages and cultural practices to the country, contributing to its linguistic diversity. And as different immigrant groups arrive in the country, they faced pressure to assimilate the American culture, including adopting the English language. So English was established as the primary language of governance, education, and commerce, laying the foundation for its continued prominence in American society. And for the evolution of the English-only movement, also known as official English or English First, gained traction in the late 20th century. It advocates for English as the official and sole language for government operations, public services, and official documents. Proponents argue that a common language fosters national unity and facilitates communication, while critics view it as a form of linguistic and cultural hegemony. So they believe that establishing English as the official language promotes social cohesion and helps immigrants integrate into American society more effectively. So some critics, they argue that mandating English as the sole language excludes non-English speaking communities, and it undermines linguistic and cultural diversity in the United States. And critics also raise concerns about the potential marginalization of immigrant communities and the erosion of their cultural heritage under official English policies. So first, what is language policy? Language policy refers to a set of principles, laws, regulations, and guidelines governing the use, choice, and promotion of languages within a particular context, such as a nation, region, or institution. So language policies aim to regulate linguistic diversity, promote language standardization, and facilitate communication, preserve cultural heritage, and address issues of social inclusion and equity. And what is marginalization? Marginalization refers to the social process of relegating individuals or groups to the fringes or periphery of society, depriving them of access to resources, opportunities, and decision-making processes. So we have here the four forms of marginalization. The first one is the economic marginalization. So for example, like poverty, unemployment, And for the social marginalization, this is where discrimination and stigmatization happens. And for the political marginalization, it is inclusion from political participation. And cultural marginalization, we have, for example, loss of language and cultural identity. So we have here the English only movement, also known as official English or English first, emerged in the late 20th century in response to concerns about linguistic diversity and its perceived impact on national identity and unity. It gained momentum through grassroots advocacy, political campaigns, and legislative efforts at both state and federal levels. So we have the goals and proponents here. So the primary goal of the English only movement is to establish English as the official and sole language for government operations, public services, education, official documents. And for the proponents of the English only movement includes politicians, advocacy groups, and individuals who advocate for linguistic homogeneity as a means of preserving cultural unity and promoting assimilation. So organizations such as US English and English First have been at the forefront of promoting official English legislations. So like the English movement has started in the late century, and they thought having just one language, which is English, would really help everyone feel more like they belong to the same country. And for the supporters of this movement believe that using only English for things like government work and paperwork makes life simpler and helps everyone understand each other better. So for example, like groups like US English and English First have been working to make laws in different states that say English should be the official language. They think that it will help everyone feel more connected and make it easier for people to understand each other. Especially politicians and other supporters of the English-only movement agree, saying that using only English for things like government paperwork and services will make life more simpler and help immigrants become part of American culture faster. So we have the critics and controversies. The English-only movement has sparked significant debate and critique. Critics argue that it undermines linguistic diversity, perpetuates exclusionary practices, and promotes cultural supremacy. So we have here the three criticisms of the English-only movement: the linguistic diversity, exclusionary nature, and cultural supremacy. So for the linguistic diversity, critics argue that the English-only movement disregards the rich linguistic diversity present in the United States and marginalizing non-English speaking communities and undermining cultural pluralism. So this means the critic argue that the English-only movement ignores the diverse languages spoken in the United States. For example, like Spanish, Chinese, and other languages are prevalent in many communities. By promoting English as the only language, it sidelines these linguistic communities and undermines their cultural richness. And for the exclusionary nature, the English movement is criticized for its exclusionary nature, as it can limit access to essential services and opportunities for non-English speakers, particularly immigrants and minority groups. This means they are criticize the English-only movement for excluding non-English speakers for accessing essential services. For instance, immigrants who are not fluent in English may face barriers in areas like healthcare and legal services, limiting their opportunities for advancement and integration into society. And for the cultural supremacy, we have here the critics view the promotion of English as the sole language as a form of cultural supremacy privileging one linguistic and cultural group over others and erasing linguistic and cultural heritage. This means like the critics see the promotion of English as the sole language as privileging one culture over others. Like for example, like Native American languages and traditions as well as those of other minority groups risk being overshadowed by the dominance of English, erasing their cultural heritage. And for the controversies surrounding language policy in the United States extend beyond legal challenges to encompass debates over education, social cohesion, and political division. So we have here also the three controversies surrounding language policy in the United States, which are the legal challenges, impact on education, and social and political division. So for the first one, like the legal challenges, so language policies such as official English legislation have faced legal challenges. For instance, some argue that mandating English as the official language may violate the First Amendment rights to freedom of speech and expression. These legal battles highlight the complexities of language policy in relation to constitutional rights and the impact of education. So, like language policy controversies extend to education, particularly regarding bilingual education programs and ESL instruction. So, for example, like debates arise over whether to prioritize English language proficiency over maintaining students' native languages and cultural identities. And for the social and political division, language policy debates often deepen social and political divides. For example, or for instance, discussions around language requirements for citizenship and government services can ignite tensions related to immigration and national identity, highlighting broader societal divisions. So these examples illustrate the critics and controversies surrounding language policy in the United States, emphasizing the multifaceted nature of the debate and its implications for diverse communities. And now for the current landscape. So we have the overview of the current state of language policy in the United States. The United States maintains a diverse linguistic landscape with English as the dominant language but no official language at the federal level. Many states have adopted official English legislation. Language access laws ensure equitable services for linguistically diverse populations, and there is growing support for bilingual education initiatives. Institutions are implementing language access initiatives, and recent discussions in immigration policy have implications for language policy. Ongoing debates revolve around linguistic diversity, language rights, and the balance between a common language and cultural inclusion. So that means in the US, they speak many different languages, but English is the main one. While there is no official language for the whole country, some states have laws saying English should be used officially. Laws also make sure everyone can get help in their language, and there's more support for teaching in different languages at school. Some places are also making it easier for people who don't speak English well to get help and talk about what language they use and how they teach it is still ongoing, especially when it comes to immigration and making sure everyone feels included. And for the recent developments or trends, so in recent years, there has been more focus in making sure people who speak different languages can get help in important situations like voting or going to the doctor. Some places are also starting programs to teach students in different languages to help them learn better. With discussions about immigration, there is also talk about what language people need to know to become citizens and how well they need to speak it. So overall, there is ongoing talk about how we use language and teach it, especially when it comes to including everyone. So now we have the conclusion. So for the conclusion, we have three parts. The first one is the summary of key points, and the second is the reflections on the role of language policy in marginalization, and the last part is the implications for future research or action. Now, for the first one, the summary of key points. So, language policy in the United States is complex and dynamic, reflecting the nation's diverse linguistic landscape. While English is widely spoken, the absence of a federally mandated official language underscores the importance of accommodating linguistic diversity. So, recent trends focus on ensuring language access and support for bilingual education, while discussions surrounding immigration highlight the interconnectedness of language policy with broader societal issues. Ongoing debates emphasize the need to balance the promotion of a common language with respect for individual and cultural differences, underscoring the ongoing importance of inclusive language policies and fostering social cohesion and inclusion. So, in short, language rules in the US are complicated because they speak many different languages. So, even though English is used a lot, there's no official rule saying it has to be the only language. So recently, there's been more talk about making sure everyone can get help in their language and supporting programs that teach kids in different languages. So when they talk about language rules, it's not just about what language to use, but also about making sure everyone feels included and respected. Or not they use, but when we talk about language, so it's not just about what language to use, but also about making sure everyone feels included and respected. For example, imagine a school where students speak different languages at home. Some people might say the school should only teach in English so everyone learns it well. Others might think it's important to also teach in the students' native language to help them learn better. This shows how language rules affect everyone differently and why it's important to find a balance that makes everyone feel included. The second one, the reflections on the role of language policy in marginalization. So, language policy plays a significant role in shaping societal dynamics, particularly in relation to marginalization. The English only movement and other language policies can inadvertently contribute to the exclusion and marginalization of linguistic and cultural minority groups. It's essential to recognize the potential impacts of language policies on marginalized communities and strive for inclusive policies that value linguistic diversity while promoting social equity and inclusion. So, in simpler terms, language rules have a big impact on how society works, especially when it comes to leaving some groups out. The English only idea and other language rules might make some cultural and language groups feel left out or not important. It's important to think about how these rules affect everyone and make sure language rules include and respect everyone. So let's say, for example, think about a community where people speak different languages. If the rules say only one language can only be used in schools and government, some people might feel like their language and culture aren't important. This shows why it's important to have rules that make everyone feel included and respected, no matter what language they speak. And lastly, the implications for future research or action. So in conclusion, there are important implications for future research and action regarding language policy. Further research is needed to understand the intersection of language policy, marginalization, and social equity. Advocacy efforts should focus on promoting inclusive language policies that recognize and value linguistic diversity while addressing systemic inequalities. Collaboration among policymakers, educators, community leaders, and advocacy groups is crucial in advancing equitable language policies and fostering a more inclusive society. So, in more simpler terms, the way we make rules about language has a big impact on how fair and inclusive our society is. We need more research to understand how language rules affect different groups of people, especially those who are already marginalized. We should work together to create rules that include everyone and treat all languages with respect. This means that policymakers, teachers, community leaders, and advocacy groups needs to work together to make sure everyone's voices are heard and respected. So example, like imagine a town where people speak many different languages. If the rules say only one language can be used in schools and government, some people might feel left out or ignored. But if the rules say everyone's language is important and should be respected, it helps everyone feel included and valued. So this shows why it's important for everyone to work together to make fair and inclusive language rules. So that's all for my report, and here we have the references for my report. So especially I did have the Deneire Marc language policy as tool for marginalization, and also I did get some ideas from the other three references. So that's all. Thank you.